Now, the Thargoids haven't exactly had a major part to play in Elite in recent times. However, over the past years, they've certainly made their mark. Here's 3 times that the Thargoids surprised the player base, and some predictions at 3 more future occasions. Although we didn't really know it at the time, the first encounter with the Thargoid technology were the unknown artifacts and the unknown probes. These came with a mystery and a puzzle to solve, and whilst they were certainly interesting, I wouldn't necessarily class them as a surprise. The first real surprise then came in 2015 with the discovery of the first Barnacles. These strange organic structures could be found on various planets and moons. And whilst the Thargoids were still not in the game at that point, it was nonetheless widely suspected that the Barnacles were somehow connected to this alien race. Some years later, in 2017, this was proven to be true when the Thargoids were witnessed harvesting from the Barnacles. The Barnacles then were a biotech grown on planets in order to extract resources. The second Thargoid surprise, and to this day perhaps the largest, were the first Thargoid Hyperdictions. These occurred unexpectedly in January of 2017. The initial events happened around the Pleiades Nebula. When players entered hyperspace, jumping between star systems, there was a chance that of the jump being hijacked, players would be ripped out of hyperspace and dropped into deep space. Thargoid vessels would then disable the player's ship before making a flyby followed by a scan. This was a major event for the game and garnered a huge amount of interest from the player base and the gaming press alike. The third Thargoid surprise was the discovery of the Thargoid bases on planetary surfaces. The bases themselves were organic and extremely unusual looking. Eventually, players discovered they could enter the bases by carrying a Thargoid probe inside their SRV. Inside could be found a huge alien machine. Once activated, the machine would display an amazing light show, which would later be confirmed to be a map. Further, if the machine was activated using another alien technology, this time from the Guardians, the machine would become extremely aggressive, damaging and potentially even destroying anything nearby. Eventually, the Thargoids attacked human stations in various star systems. The attacks continued for many months as they worked their way from the outer edges of inhabited space towards the central capital systems. And then the attacks simply stopped. The Thargoids have made a few appearances since then, but for the most part they have been pretty quiet these past few years. In some ways it feels like a wasted opportunity, as at one point it felt as though the Thargoids were on the verge of something huge, but then they simply backed off. There's also numerous official lore references which implied big things were coming, but these too never arrived. So that pretty much covers what I feel are the 3 most surprising Thargoid events from the recent years, plus a few additional ones to boot. Now, once the Thargoids have pretty much gone, they're still out there, but not in a significant way. I am of the opinion that the Thargoids will continue to show up here and there, and I personally think it's very likely there will be some future big events involving them. So here's 3 future events I will speculate in order of likelihood, from least likely to most likely. The least likely Thargoid event then would be an attack on Earth and the other capital homeworlds. This seemed like the direction things were headed in back in 2017 when the Thargoids were moving towards the centre of the bubble. So this could still be something that happens in the future perhaps? Not just an attack on space stations within capital systems, but also full-on assaults on the homeworlds. It kind of feels unlikely, but I think it'd be something that would be very, very impressive and draw a lot of player interest, there's no doubt about that. Next, this one is perhaps a bit more likely, Thargoid motherships. Now these have been a rumour since at least 2018. To start with, a number of references to large Thargoid ships have been found by data miners. Secondly, more than a few people have long suspected that the Thargoid ground bases are not bases at all, but rather Thargoid motherships being built or more likely grown from the ground. It's a great idea, and Thargoid motherships fighting with human capital class ships would be a great addition to the game. So in my opinion on this one, it is reasonably likely, at least compared to a full-on attack on Earth. However, as the years move on, the odds become increasingly against it, simply due to the fact that it just don't seem to be happening. And finally, the most likely next Thargoid encounter I believe we will have seems to me at least to be an on-foot Thargoid combat encounter. This would fit in perfectly with what we already know about Odyssey and would add a good amount of variety to the game. And I would be perfectly blunt here as well, not including Thargoid ground-based combat in a future Odyssey update would be a massively wasted opportunity. Added to this, we have already seen various concept art pieces for Thargoids, so for me, in my books, this one seems very likely to happen. It's really just a question of when. So, what future Thargoid events would you like to see happen? Do let me know in the comments section below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.